Subscribe to the channel and also press the bell icon to never miss an update from Endeavour Careers. Hello and welcome to Endeavour's GK Capsule for the month of May 2022. The month of May saw change in leadership for many nations including Australia, France, Sri Lanka and South Korea among others. In this edition, we will discuss this and other news such as the World Economic Forum's annual meeting that was conducted in Davos, the Federal Reserve's announcement of raising benchmark rate by 50 basis points, the biggest rate increase since 2000, increase in repo rate and cash reserve ratio announced by RBI to curb the rising inflation, export ban imposed on wheat by the Indian government, strengthening of economic ties between US and India as indicated by the significant increase in bilateral trade between the two nations, flash floods and landslides in Assam that displaced nearly 6 lakh people, Rafael Nadal's victory at the French Open and Gujarat Titans being crowned champions of the Tata Indian Premier League. The first category is Awards and Recognition. Indian author Gitanjali Shri has won the International Booker Prize, making her the first writer from the South Asian nation to claim the prestigious literary award. Shri's winning novel, Tomb of Sand, follows an 80-year-old woman as she gains a new lease on life following the death of her husband. Set in the shadow of the 1947 partition of India, Shri explores themes of trauma, motherhood and feminism. Translated from Hindi to English by Daisy Rockwell, the book is the first in an Indian language to win the award, which recognizes fiction translated into English and published in the United Kingdom or Ireland. The International Booker Prize is separate from the Booker Prize, which is awarded to novels written in English. Filmmaker Shaunak Sen's documentary All That Breathes, India's only entry at Cannes Film Festival 2022, has won the 2022 L'Oeil d'Or, the festival's top prize for documentaries. The story of brothers Nadeem and Saud, who rescue black kites with the money they make from selling soap dispensers, is at the heart of the film. The L'Oeil d'Or Documentary Award, also known as the Golden Eye Award, was created in 2015 by the French-speaking Authors Society, LASCAM, in collaboration with the Cannes Film Festival. Our next section is Persons in News. Elizabeth Borne was appointed France's new Prime Minister in May to become the second woman to hold the post in the country after Edith Cresson, who was Prime Minister in 1991-92 under Socialist President François Mitterrand. Borne, 61, succeeds Jean Castex, who handed over his resignation after President Emmanuel Macron's re-election. Borne had a brief stint as Environment Minister in 2019. She then took charge of the Labour Ministry and oversaw negotiations with unions that resulted in a cut to unemployment benefits for some job seekers. On her watch, unemployment fell to its lowest level in 15 years and youth unemployment to its lowest level in 40 years. In the 2022 federal election in Australia, the opposition Labour Party has ousted Prime Minister Scott Morrison's coalition government from power. Anthony Albanese, the leader of the Australian Labour Party and the leader of opposition, has assumed the position of Australia's 31st Prime Minister. He has served as a Member of Parliament in Australia since 1996. Staunch Conservative and former Defence Minister Peter Dutton will now be opposition leader after he was chosen by the Liberal Party to replace Mr. Morrison. On 12th May 2022, Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in as the 26th Prime Minister of Sri Lanka to steady the nation's economy, which is debt-ridden, and to end the ongoing political turmoil. Sri Lanka's worst economic crisis has provoked widespread protests calling for political reform and leading to resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his brother Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was elected the 17th President of the Philippines. He assumes this position 36 years after his father, The known dictator and plunderer Ferdinand Sr. was ousted in a peaceful revolution. Marcos Jr. won the presidency with 31 million votes, trouncing his closest rival, Vice President Leonor Leni Robredo, who received 15 million votes. Ferdinand Marcos Sr. established martial law in the Philippines from 1972 to 81, a period of brutal repression with more than 11,000 documented human rights violations. Marcos Jr. promises to restore the golden age of peace and prosperity that his father had begun, raising questions about whether that means a future of martial law. South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol was sworn in as the President of South Korea in May, replacing Moon Jae-in. Jae-in was the 12th president of the country and was in charge from 2017 to 22. Suk Yeol represents the People Power Party. He begins his 5-year term as tensions on the Korean peninsula heighten and inter-Korean diplomacy remains at an indefinite impasse. Hong Kong's controversial former security chief, John Lee Ka-chief, was named the island city's new leader following a closed voting process in May. He will begin his 5-year term as chief executive starting from 1st July. Lee, the sole candidate in the race to be Hong Kong's next chief executive, was picked by a small committee of Beijing loyalists through secret ballot. He won 1,416 votes, or roughly 99% of the votes. UAE President and ruler of Abu Dhabi and one of the richest monarchs in the world, President Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan of the United Arab Emirates, passed away at the age of 73. Sheikh Khalifa was the president of the UAE since 2004, but his role had been largely ceremonial since he suffered a stroke in 2014. His half-brother, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, is now in charge of state affairs. Swashbuckling former all-rounder Andrew Symonds died in a car crash, in another tragic blow after the recent deaths of fellow greats Shane Warne and Rod Marsh. The 46-year-old, who played 26 tests and 198 one-day internationals for Australia from 1998 to 2009, is widely considered as one of the most skilled all-rounders Australian cricket has seen, bowling both off-spin and medium pace while playing many match-winning hands with his explosive middle-order batting. Symonds was also a top-rated fielder and was a key part of Australia's back-to-back 50-over World Cup triumphs in 2003 and 2007. Noted Bollywood singer KK Krishnamurthy Kunnat, who mesmerized music lovers for over 3 decades, passed away at 53 in Kolkata after a live performance. KK was regarded as one of the top singers of Bollywood. KK sang in Hindi, Bengali, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, Marathi and Assamese. His song Yaro, released in 1999, made him a household name. Sanjeev Bajaj, chairman and managing director of Bajaj Finserv Limited, has assumed office as the president of the Confederation of Indian Industry for 2022-23. He takes over from T.V. Narendran, CEO and managing director of Tata Steel Limited. Bajaj has led CII National Committees on Insurance and Pensions and CII Task Force on FinTech. He is an alumnus of the Harvard Business School USA and a member of the Board of Indian School of Business, member of the International Advisory Board, Allianz SE, and the International Technology Advisory Panel of Monetary Authority of Singapore and Regional Stewardship Board for India and South Asia 2019-2020 of the World Economic Forum. General Manoj Pandey took charge as the 29th Chief of the Army Staff after incumbent General M.M. Narvane retired from service. General Pandey, who was serving as the Vice Chief, became the first officer from the Corps of Engineers to helm the force. Before taking charge as Vice Chief of the Army on February 1, General Pandey was heading the Eastern Army Command, tasked with guarding the line of actual control in Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh sectors. Leading stock exchange BSE has appointed S.S. Mundra, a public interest director, as the chairman of the board. Mr. Mundra will replace Justice Vikramajit Sen. Mundra retired as Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank of India in July 2017 after a stint of 3 years. Prior to that, he was Chairman and Managing Director of Bank of Baroda, from where he superannuated in July 2014. In a banking career spanning over 4 decades, Mundra has held several important positions. He also served as RBI's nominee on the Financial Stability Board for the G20 Forum and its various committees. He was also the Vice Chair of OECD's International Network on Financial Education. Indian business tycoon Gautam Adani, Supreme Court lawyer Karuna Nandi, and Kashmiri human rights activist Khurram Parvez have been featured on Time's 100 Most Influential People of the World 2022. Adani, a business tycoon, is the chairman and founder of Adani Group in India. Karuna Nandi is an advocate in India's Supreme Court. She has been fighting for women's rights and is constantly striving for reforming anti-rape laws. She is also fighting to bring marital rape under the umbrella of the rape law of the country. Khurram Parvez is the head of the Asian Federation Against Involuntary Disappearances. For years, he has been fighting for the human rights of the people of Kashmir. Leading UK-based academic Dr. Swati Dhingra has been named as the first Indian origin woman to be appointed as an external member of the Bank of England's Interest Rate Setting Committee. Dhingra will replace current external member Michael Saunders, who has been on the MPC since August 2016. Dhingra, who studied at the University of Delhi and got her master's from the Delhi School of Economics, will join the Monetary Policy Committee on August 9 for a 3-year term. Dhingra is an associate professor of economics at the London School of Economics, having specialization in international economics and applied microeconomics. Manik Saha took oath as new Tripura Chief Minister in May, ahead of the State Assembly election to be held early next year. Saha was named as the CM after Biplab Kumar Deb called it quits. Deb is now likely to take over as the BJP Tripura Chief. Manik Saha is the BJP State Unit President of Tripura as well as the only Rajya Sabha MP from the state. Moving on to our next section, Places in News. The strategically significant Sela Tunnel project in Arunachal Pradesh is nearing completion well before the deadline. The Sela Tunnel is the longest bi-lane road tunnel in the world. The total length of the project, including the tunnels, the approach and the link roads, will be around 12 kilometers. The tunnel is being constructed by the Border Roads Organization at an altitude of 13,800 feet near the Indo-China border. All-weather connectivity to Tawang and other forward areas in the sector will be the most important advantage that the project promises. The project will provide a new alignment on the axis towards the LAC and allow movement of military and civil vehicles all through the year. On the occasion of World Wetlands Day 2022, which is on 2nd February 2022, Bakhira Wildlife Sanctuary was listed as one of the Ramsar sites in India. It is the largest natural floodplain wetland in Uttar Pradesh. Along with this, Khijadia Wildlife Sanctuary, Gujarat, was also listed as a Ramsar site. This makes the number of Ramsar sites in Uttar Pradesh up to 10 and makes India have the largest number of sites among the countries of Southern Asia. The total number of protected wetlands in India also increased to 49. Ramsar sites are wetlands of international importance that have been designated under the criteria of Ramsar Convention on Wetlands for containing representative, rare or unique wetland types or for their importance in conserving biological diversity. Ramgarh Vishdhari Wildlife Sanctuary in Rajasthan was recently notified as India's 52nd Tiger Reserve. It is now Rajasthan's 4th Tiger Reserve after Ranthambore, Sariska and Mukundra. Though the tiger population in Ramgarh itself was not high, it plays an important role in connecting the Ranthambore and Mukundra tiger reserves. The Ramgarh Vishdhari Wildlife Sanctuary covers an area of around 252 square kilometers. It has been declared a sanctuary in 1982 under the Rajasthan Wildlife and Bird Protection Act 1951. Moving on to the major highlights in the category of national news, the Jammu and Kashmir Delimitation Commission has notified the new boundaries, names and number of assembly constituencies in Jammu and Kashmir, paving the way for the first ever assembly elections in the Union Territory that was carved out of the erstwhile state of J&K in 2019. The Delimitation Commission said in a statement that it had recommended to the centre to nominate at least 2 Kashmiri migrants to the legislature who would have the same powers as nominated members of the Puducherry Assembly, and to consider giving some representation to persons displaced from Pakistan-occupied J&K. The new assembly would have 90 seats, 47 in Kashmir and 43 in Jammu, which was an increase from the earlier 83, with 6 of the additional seats being in Jammu and 1 in Kashmir. The Commission said in its statement that for the first time in J&K, 9 seats have been reserved for scheduled tribes. 7 seats have been reserved for scheduled castes. In other news, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement (CEPA) between India and the United Arab Emirates came into force on 1st May. This would allow 90% of the country's exports a duty-free access to the Emirates. The CEPA is likely to benefit about $26 billion worth of Indian products that are currently subjected to 5% import duty by the UAE, India's third biggest trading partner behind the US and China. The CEPA underpins the UAE's bold economic path for the next 5 decades and falls under the umbrella of the country's projects of the 50 Agenda, a comprehensive roadmap designed to double the size of the economy. With India projected to become the world's third largest economy in early next decade, the agreement comes with a huge opportunity for UAE-based businesses to gain access to a market of 1.3 billion people. Indigo became the first airline in the country to land aircraft using the indigenous navigation system Gagan. The flight was conducted using an ATR-72 aircraft and landed at the Kishangarh Airport in Rajasthan on 27th April morning using GPS-aided geo-augmented navigation, Gagan, which has been jointly developed by the Centre-run Airports Authority of India and the Indian Space Research Organisation, the statement issued by Indigo said. Gagan is used to provide lateral and vertical guidance when an aircraft is approaching a runway for landing. Its precision is especially useful at small airports where the instrument landing system has not been installed. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation has issued a mandate for all aircraft registered in India after 1st July 2021 to be fitted with Gagan equipment, it added. The Allahabad High Court in May ruled that delivering the azan on loudspeakers is not a fundamental right. The court made this remark while dismissing a petition filed by one Irfan of Budaun district who sought permission to play azan using loudspeakers in the Noori Masjid. The court further said that although azan is an integral part of Islam, delivering it through loudspeakers is not a part of the religion. Azan is the Islamic call to prayers which is given 5 times at prescribed times of the day. Central Probe Agency Enforcement Directorate seized over 5,500 crore rupees from Chinese smartphone giant Xiaomi over violations of the Indian foreign exchange law. The company, however, claimed that all its operations are firmly compliant with local laws and regulations. The ED seized that stated amount from the bank accounts of the company under the provisions of the Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999. The Central Probe Agency had initiated an investigation in connection with illegal remittances made by the company in February this year. The company started its operations in India in 2014 and started remitting money in 2015. It has so far remitted foreign currency equivalent to 5,551.27 crore rupees to 3 foreign-based entities which include one Xiaomi Group entity in the guise of royalty, the probe agency said. Flash floods and landslides in India's northeast Assam state killed at least 25 people and displaced over 650,000 from their homes. The Brahmaputra River, one of the largest rivers in the world, which flows from Tibet to India and finally into Bangladesh, burst its banks in Assam, inundating more than 1,800 villages in 26 districts in the month of May. Assam is one of the most flood-prone states in India and it has almost become an annual calamity. In terms of impact on human lives, the floods of 1988, 1998 and 2004 were the worst. The 2004 floods alone affected 12.4 million people and claimed 251 lives. The US surpassed China to become India's top trading partner in 2021-22, reflecting strengthening economic ties between the two countries. According to the data of the Commerce Ministry, in 2021-22, the bilateral trade between US and India stood at USD 119.42 billion as against USD 80.51 billion in 2020-21. Exports to the US increased to 76.11 billion US dollars in 2021-22 from 51.62 billion US dollars in previous fiscal year, while imports rose to 43.31 billion US dollars as compared to about 29 billion US dollars in 2020-21. Federation of Indian Export Organization's Vice President Khalid Khan said India is emerging as a trusted trading partner and global firms are reducing their dependence only on China for their supplies and are diversifying businesses into other countries like India. In the coming years, the bilateral trade between India and the US will continue to grow. India has joined a US-led initiative to set up an Indo-Pacific economic framework, and this move would help boost economic ties further, Khan said. Next, we have major highlights in the category International News. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting took place physically in the Swiss town of Davos from May 22 to 26 after 2 years, under the theme History at a Turning Point, Government Policies and Business Strategies. India sent a record delegation for the meet this year and presented its position on critical global issues such as energy crisis, food security and health equity in Davos. India was at the center of many dialogues on emerging issues ranging from crypto technologies to climate change. More than 100 Indian delegates, including CEOs, unicorn founders, and political leaders, were at Davos. In other news, the Federal Reserve delivered the biggest interest rate increase since 2000 last month and signaled it would keep hiking at that pace over the next couple of meetings, unleashing the most aggressive policy action in decades to combat soaring inflation. The Federal Open Market Committee voted unanimously to increase the benchmark rate by a half percentage point at its meeting on May 3 and 4, 2022. It will begin allowing its holdings of treasuries and mortgage-backed securities to decline in June at an initial combined monthly pace of $47.5 billion, stepping up over 3 months to $95 billion. With this rate hike and similar hikes in the next few months, policymakers are trying to curb the hottest inflation since the early 1980s. The Fed's hope is that the combination of higher borrowing costs and a shrinking balance sheet will deliver a soft landing that avoids recession while tamping down inflation. Indonesia, the world's biggest palm oil producer, resumed exports of palm oil after a ban of more than 3 weeks. It had halted exports of palm oil from April 28 in an attempt to bring down soaring local prices of cooking oil, rattling global edible oil markets already struggling with sunflower oil supply shortages due to the war in Ukraine. To ensure supply security, Indonesia said it will impose a domestic market obligation policy, whereby producers are required to sell a portion of their products locally at a certain price level. The availability of edible oil in India will increase as new imports will start coming in following the lifting of the export ban by the Indonesian government. This is expected to cool the prices of edible oil in India, apart from easing the price hike pressure on various items. NATO is set to expand as Finland and Sweden have confirmed they will join the security alliance. Sharing a 1300 kilometers border with Russia, Finland has remained militarily non-aligned for 75 years. But after its powerful eastern neighbor invaded Ukraine in February, political and public opinion swung dramatically in favor of membership. Russian President Vladimir Putin said the move by Finland and Sweden to join the 30-member military alliance did not threaten Moscow directly, but stressed that any expansion of military infrastructure would trigger a response from the Kremlin. Turkey opposed the Finnish and the Swedish bids to join NATO. Turkey accuses the two Nordic nations of harboring members of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, a group it views as a terrorist organization, and followers of Fethullah Gulen, who Ankara accuses of orchestrating a 2016 coup attempt. All member states must agree that a new country can join NATO. Therefore, Sweden and Finland will require Turkey's support in their bid to join the military alliance. The next category is news from the field of business, economy and industrial sector. In a surprise media briefing on 4th May, the Reserve Bank of India governor announced that key policy rates have been hiked. As per the announcement made, the RBI has hiked the repo rate by 40 basis points up to 4.40% from 4% earlier. The last time repo rate was cut in May 2020 and has been kept unchanged since then. Hike will come into effect immediately. Further, the cash reserve ratio (CRR) has been hiked by 50 basis points, which will exert further upward pressure on interest rates. There are many signals which indicate that this may be the start of an interest rate hike cycle. The Indian government has banned the export of wheat last month in order to control food prices in the domestic market. India's ban was announced on 13th May after unseasonably hot weather affected the wheat crop, sending local prices soaring. Although India is not a major wheat exporter, the move unsettled global markets. According to the Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution Ministry, the decision to restrict wheat exports will control food prices, strengthen the food security of India and countries facing a deficit, and that India remains a reliable supplier as it is honoring all contracts. Finance Ministry notified export duty on 11 iron and steel intermediates and lowered import duty on 3 key raw materials for steel production and 3 inputs for making plastic items. To reduce the cost of domestic production of steel products, import duty on coking coal and anthracite, which is high energy coal, has been reduced from 2.5% to 0, while the same on coke and semi-coke has been brought down from 5% to 0. The import duty on ferronickel, an alloy containing iron and nickel, has been lowered from 2.5% to 0. To increase local availability of iron ore and a few steel intermediates, export duty has been raised on one item and imposed on 10 other items afresh. Adani Group entered into an exclusive agreement to buy Swiss building material maker Holcim Limited's India assets, Ambuja Cements and ACC Limited. The Gautam Adani-led group bid about $10.5 billion, which is 80,000 crore rupees, to emerge as the top bidder. Adani Group is likely to spend an additional $3 to $3.5 billion to buy shares from the public shareholders, which may raise the total acquisition cost to around $13.5 billion. The value of the Holcim stake and the open offer consideration for Ambuja Cements and ACC made by Adani Group make the deal largest ever acquisition by Adani Group and India's largest ever acquisition in the infrastructure and material space. Tata Sons has appointed Campbell Wilson, a veteran at its partner Singapore Airlines, as the new chief executive of Air India. Wilson, 50, has 26 years of aviation industry expertise across both full-service and low-cost airlines. He is currently the CEO of Scoot, Singapore Airlines' low-cost, medium to long-haul subsidiary airline. As the new chief of Air India, Wilson will helm the aviation to automobile conglomerate's ambitious mission of turning around the beleaguered airline, implementing a much needed rev up of its service standards and integrating operations with its Air Asia India and possibly Vistara, Tata's jointly owned airline with SIA. Air India recently made Air Asia India its wholly owned subsidiary. It will likely be merged with its low-cost international unit, Air India Express. Shell agreed to acquire India-based renewable power platform Spring Energy for $1.55 billion, boosting the energy company's low carbon output as it shifts away from oil and gas. Shell said it would buy 100% of Sol Energy Power Private Limited, the flagship company of Spring Energy Group, from UK-based investor Actis. Spring Energy supplies solar and wind power to electricity distribution companies in India, seen as a major growth market in the power sector in the coming decades. The deal will triple Shell's current renewable capacity in operations. Moving on to our next category, meetings and summits. Prime Minister Narendra Modi participated in the second India-Nordic Summit at Christiansborg Palace in Copenhagen, Denmark. Primarily focused on post-pandemic economic recovery, climate change, renewable energy, and the evolving global security scenario. The summit provided an opportunity to review the progress of the India-Nordic relations since the first India-Nordic Summit, which was held in 2018 in Stockholm. Prime Minister invited Nordic companies for investing in the blue economy sector, especially in India's Sagarmala project. India's partnership with the Nordic region in the Arctic region was also discussed. Prime Minister noted that India's Arctic policy provides a good framework for expansion of India-Nordic cooperation in the Arctic region. Moving on to our next category, science and technology. Mindtree Limited and Larsen & Toubro Infotech Limited, two technology companies in the L&T group, have decided to merge, creating India's fifth largest IT firm with a combined market valuation of 1,36,000 crore rupees. Shareholders of Mindtree will be issued shares of L&T Infotech at the ratio of 73 shares of LTI for every 100 shares of Mindtree. The proposed integration will see Mindtree and LTI join strengths to create an efficient and scaled-up IT services provider exceeding $3.5 billion, L&T said. L&T Limited acquired Mindtree in 2019 through a hostile takeover move after acquiring 20.4% stake from coffee baron VG Siddharth and others, and later making a public offer to buy more shares from public. India will launch an open network for digital commerce as the government tries to end the dominance of US companies Amazon.com and Walmart in the fast-growing e-commerce market. The launch of the platform comes after India's antitrust body raided domestic sellers of Amazon and some of Walmart's Flipkart following accusations of competition law violations. Indian retailers have long contended that Amazon and Flipkart's platforms benefit a few big sellers via predatory pricing, though the companies say they comply with all Indian laws. The government's ONDC platform will allow buyers and sellers to connect and transact with each other online, no matter what other application they use. Walmart Inc.'s Indian payments unit, PhonePe, will acquire two wealth management firms for a total enterprise value of $75 million, bringing the retail giant head-to-head with Amazon.com Inc. in the country's rapidly expanding money management segment. PhonePe will buy WealthDesk for about $50 million and OpenQ for nearly $25 million. The founder of WealthDesk and the entire team will be working as a part of the PhonePe group, and both the platforms will remain independent, PhonePe said in a statement. Post-acquisition, OpenQ will be instrumental in creating the wealth ecosystem for the PhonePe group. In other news, scientists provided the first look of the monster lurking at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, unveiling an image of a supermassive black hole that devours any matter wandering within its gargantuan gravitational pull. The black hole, called Sagittarius A star or SGR A star, is only the second one ever to be imaged. The feat was accomplished by the same Event Horizon Telescope international collaboration that in 2019 unveiled the first ever photo. Sagittarius A star possesses 4 million times the mass of our Sun and is located about 26,000 light years, the distance light travels in a year, 5.9 trillion miles, that is 9.5 trillion kilometer from Earth. Moving on to our next category of sports, Rafael Nadal won a record-extending 22nd Grand Slam title after beating Casper Ruud in the final of French Open men's single event at Court Philippe Chatrier. Nadal continued his unbeaten run in finals at Roland Garros, defeating Ruud 6-3, 6-3, 6-0 to clinch his record-extending 14th French Open title. Nadal also became the oldest player to win the French Open. The Gujarat Titans were crowned champions of the Tata Indian Premier League 2022 after defeating the Rajasthan Royals by 7 wickets at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. Needing 131 runs to win, GT chased down the target with 7 wickets and 11 balls to spare. A determined Indian men's badminton team etched its name in the history books by lifting the Thomas Cup title for the first time with a dominant 3-0 win over 14-time champions Indonesia in the finals. India dished out a performance for the ages with World Championships medalist Lakshya Sen, Kidambi Shrikant and world number 8 doubles duo of Chirag Shetty and Satvik Sairaj Ranki Reddy producing memorable performances. In other news, Nikhat Zareen became only the 5th Indian boxer to win a gold medal at the Women's World Boxing Championship, joining Mary Kom, Sarita Devi, Jenny RL and Lekha Casey in the elite list. She defeated Thailand's Jitpong Jutamas in the 52 kgs final in Istanbul, Turkey. India's previous gold medal had come during the 2018 Women's Boxing World Championship when Mary Kom had defeated Ukraine's Hana Okhota in the light flyweight category of 45 to 48 kgs. All India Football Federation President Praful Patel has been removed from the post after Supreme Court reconstituted the Committee of Administrators, which will be headed by former Apex Court Judge A.R. Dave to manage the affairs of the All India Football Federation. The COA will also facilitate the adoption of AIFF Constitution in line with the National Sports Code and model guidelines. Patel, who has been at the helm of the All India Football Federation for more than a decade, was named the Vice President of the Asian Football Council in 2015 and 4 years later got promoted to the all-powerful FIFA Council. This brings us to the end of this month's edition of GK Capsule. We hope you like the coverage of topics in our monthly edition. Do also watch our other online videos. Happy learning. Thank you.